Okay, so today we have Austin Hancock in the house, all the way from San Diego. Had a little rough patch getting here today, but we appreciate you traveling here. We want to hear your success story about how you became such a badass in real estate and the steps that brought you to where you're at today. So let's hear your story and let's reel it all the way back in to when you were a teenager. Tell us what you were like.
Oh, awesome. Oh, thanks for having me out, guys. So I appreciate it. It's been great, and the weather in San Diego, it rains a little bit. So that's the only reason we had a little bit of delay. Yeah,
Twice a year.
What the hell
Have
is
a good
this?
day.
You flew into a hurricane?
Yeah, I flew into here. You
Literally.
guys are used to that.
Yeah.
So everybody's normal.
Flooding again today. We finally started to dry out. Everybody started to get their power back and they're losing their power again today.
Yeah,
so I
that's what
hope
she
your
said
hotel
on
has
the way
power tonight.
I know. I hope so too. If not, we'll pivot. We'll be fine. But or I'm staying with you guys actually.
We're in a hotel too. We don't have any power.
No power?
No power.
Dang.
A tree fell on our house.
Oh, I did see that picture.
She was on my ass about a generator for like the last couple of months. I'm like, I'm getting bids. And of course, hurricane.
I'm like, the price that you would have paid for the generator now
I know.
you're paying
You would
for a
have already
hotel.
paid for it. Yeah.
I know.
I was like, I don't know when you're
But
going
you're
to
only
learn.
gonna get a portion of the house. I mean, you guys got a good sized house. So you probably get one or two generators at least, and just run some of the stuff.
Well, our friend who builds pools, he's like, I just found out I have the right kind of license to buy a generator, so you'll be my first victim to figure this out. So we hope we don't blow up the neighborhood, but we're gonna have a generator here in a couple of
Get an
weeks.
electrician or the
They kind of
Generac
skip the
panel.
line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my guesstimate was that we get about 6 storms this season, so we'll see. We got 3 already where we lost power, so
She already?
3 this year.
Wow.
Yep, it's always something around here.
Dang.
But anyways,
Yeah,
we
so
brought
where
you
do I
here.
start?
Yeah, we want to hear about you. I read up about you and was watching some of your videos.
What'd you read
and
about me?
All kinds of terrible things.
I'm sure.
After your background check. No.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. So I mean, honestly, how I grew up, I grew up just a middle class kid, just riding my bike to the park, hanging out with my friends, skating, just normal. I was a fairly good kid, I'll say, up until I hit puberty and got a little testosterone in me, and then I kind of went a little haywire and it took the wrong direction for a little bit.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Edmond, Oklahoma.
Okay,
So
you're in
just north
California
of-
now, but
yeah,
you
I'm in California
okay.
now, and I grew up right outside of Oklahoma City, suburbs of Oklahoma City.
Okay.
So, nice town, nice place. Edmond's a good spot. Grew up just being a normal kid, playing baseball. Got into track in middle school, did wrestling for a long time. Playing sports, pretty active outside all the time, doing the dirt jumps. You name it, right? BMX. I mean,
It's always been athletic.
yeah, always
Just like Sean.
outside. Yeah.
Born and bred. I feel like the guys like you that are so obsessed with health and fitness, it's kind of like you're just born that way. It didn't just happen
It's
later
like
on
you're
in life.
driven to it. Like you just love it. I mean, I don't know. We probably would have, if we hang out in the same neighborhood, we would have rode bikes together.
I'm
Or we
sure,
done this.
yeah.
That's just how it is. Yeah. And I think it's like that as adults too, the gym environment or wherever you do CrossFit, bodybuilding, whatever it is.
Well, for Tim, it's always been like mental health. He's like, I think as a kid, I didn't know what anxiety meant, but I just knew that when I worked out, I just felt better. And he still kind of just goes with that every day.
Yeah, I
works
had a
out
bunch of
6 days.
anxiety all the way from when I was 15, and I'm like, I don't know why. Just no reason.
Yeah.
Nothing happened to make me feel that way. I just would wake up that way.
But
And
working
so
out,
once I started working out, I got super into it, and that's the only thing that helped.
Hey, you seem like the type of guy that gets laser focused into something.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, she can tell you. I'm
there's
no
actually-
distractions.
when I
That's
start
actually a
something, I'm
problem.
like,
Yeah.
I go all in.
full first, balls to the
Yeah.
wall.
good. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good thing.
I hear you enlisted in the Marines.
Yes.
So how did that happen? And
I always wanted to be in the military. So, I mean, I was reading the books, when I'd go to the library in school, in high school, I was looking at the Navy SEAL books. I was looking at the Marine books. I always wanted to do something in the military. I'd watched all the movies, the Arnold movies to all the war stuff. And I was always obsessed. I loved war history. I'd watch World War II in color, whatever was out then.
Amber
So-
too. Amber's back here like, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
She's
I could
always
just
been
sit there and
obsessed
watch
as
it
a
for
kid.
hours. So I was obsessed about history. I really enjoyed that. I found a lot of, I just had fun in learning about it. And so dude, I want to be those dude. I want to be a commando. I want to be this guy. Right. So, and that was the kind of the path I was going down. But I had to pivot a little bit. So at 17 years old, I was just getting into my pubescent years and hit a little bit of testosterone and started drinking. I come from a very conservative family, not like, Mormon or Pentecostal, which no hack, just not like that. Like I grew up Church of Christ.
That's what I
so
grew up
very
in.
close.
Same.
Church of Christ?
Assembly of God.
Oh, okay, very
I don't know what
close.
Church
Yeah.
of Christ is, but I think it's very similar.
Very
It's like
similar.
half Pentecostal.
Yeah, so but we had no instruments in the church, and it's nothing bad, nothing about it. It's just how I grew up, and my parents never had alcohol in the house. I mean, my dad was I don't want to tell you a whole story about that, but like my parents are still together. Everybody's pretty traditional, right? So a good household. And when I just wanted to buck the system, I was like, yeah, they got this idea. I'm going to figure it out on my own. You know what I mean? And so I started drinking. I started lying to them about where I was going. I started partying, wanted to carve things out on my own. And it ultimately led me into quite a bit of problems. The first bigger situation that I ever got in, I brought the fight back to my parents' house. And it was just like, just regular scraps, but they would escalate and escalate further. And that's how things happen, right? Like you say, it just goes from schoolyard fights in middle school to high school schoolyard fights. But then people that you that don't like that, or you could whip their ass, essentially turn around and get their friends involved or more people or use weapons and things like that. And so, I mean, I see how, younger people today can get themselves in a pinch really quick, because I was down that rabbit hole. I was a fork in the road in my life where I could have gone the wrong direction.
I think a lot of guys, when
especially
you're 18,
driven guys,
you make so many bad decisions. I don't even feel like I'm the same person anymore.
100%. Yeah.
Just the decisions you make, you're just like, I'll think back and did I really think like that? Wow. You think you're bulletproof, basically.
Well, something
really
happens.
do.
Like some guy confronted us at the gas station, I don't know, like 5 years ago. And Sean's like, let's just get in the car and let's just drive off. He's like, the old me would have got out and whooped his fucking ass.
Yeah.
He's like, but I know that I have just too much to lose now. But when I was a young, dumb teenager, somebody would smart off. Everybody knew he was a fighter, and they would like pick it on him and his friends, and they'd whoop their ass. And that was just being in a small town with nothing to do, just drinking and fighting.
Yeah,
and
it's
all you do.
But everything happens for a reason. We all know this. And if the fork in the road wouldn't have happened, you getting in trouble for this kind of stuff, what would you be doing today? Working at the plant?
Exactly. I don't know. It's a great question, right? We don't know. So I think in general, though, I mean, I would have been driven. I just don't know what would have happened. I wouldn't have been able to fulfill what I wanted to do, which is join the military, because I was driven. I had this vision of being that guy. And so ultimately what happened is I got in a few fights, and then it escalated, and I got in another situation to where we won't go all into the details, but I had 2 felonies and 2 misdemeanors.
We love the details.
You want the details?
We love the details.
You want the details? Okay,
We got an
so
hour.
I'll try to make it short and simple, because it could be an hour-long conversation. But essentially what happened was I'd gone to a party. Everybody's outside in the front yard. Then there were some cops that had cruised the neighborhood, so everybody pivoted and went inside. They're like, shut the doors. They can't do anything if we're inside. It's chill. And I didn't know the people. When you show up to a party, you're with a few buddies and some girls, and then you just go into this random home. So I'm in there, and there's some older people. So I'm 17 years old, and there's some freshmen in college. So they're like 20, and then there's some sophomores, like 21, like some older people. At that age, that's a big age gap, right? Not so much now in our lives, but at that age it was. And so we went in there, and one thing led to the next, and somebody had asked if I was talking to some girl, and I was like, I don't know, man. I've talked to a lot of people in the party.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything foul, but I don't know. And the other guy was like, hey man, come with me. I got a question for you, and called me out back. And so I looked at my friend that was with me.
You knew it was about to happen.
I was like, hey man, come with me. Like, I'm gonna go out there, but come with me. And so we go out back, essentially get jumped, and we scrap back. Right, it wasn't terrible, but we were all riled up, and now the game was on. Right, like testosterone through the roof, ego through the roof. And so we go and jump the fence, we leave, and we go get the tire irons and everything out of the truck that my buddy had. And we just come back in bashing windows and taking off mirrors on cars. And so really just setting the bar. Like, if you're going to do that, we're going to do this. And that was kind of my mindset. Like, we'll take it further than you will no matter what. And so we go do all that, and then they freak out, essentially, which they should, right? I mean, rightfully so. Everybody else in the party is like, what's going on? The front windows are being busted out. And we go get more people. We're like, we got to get more upperclassmen. They had a bunch of people. We just got jumped. We're all mad, rally the boys, right? And so we go grab some more guys. When we left, the cops showed up to take a report. And I didn't know this going back, right? And so we come back, cops had left because they just took the report, but they're around the street. And so we come back and we're down there, and the dudes we went and got, of course, are already a little tuned up, right? They're already drunk. They're already partying. They're their own thing. We picked them up from another place. And so one of the guys, he's older than me. He was like, is this the house? And I was like, yes. We're walking down there, and I instinctively remember him just going to the front door and kicking it in, just bashing that front door. And meanwhile, the party kind of died out, but there's still people in there that were partying and stuff. And so we just blast the door down, and I look in, and the homeowner, I would say the homeowner, I think he was a kid leasing it, right?
Yeah.
21-year-old college student leasing the property. He was looking at me, and he's like, bro, what's your problem? And it's the kid that jumped me in the back, the other guy that jumped me in the backyard. And so I crow hop him in the head with the tire iron, and I immediately at that point was like, oh, this could have gone way worse.
Yeah. Because
his heads bleed like crazy, if you don't already know. And so it just pours down his face, and I was like, oh boy. And he kind of seems like stunned, right? I mean, he just got smoked in the head with a tire iron. So it's not something to brag about too. I'm not really like bragging about this. I want people to know like who I am today.
Kids make dumb decisions, and shit happens when.
But at that point, right? that could have killed him. What if he had any kind of like blood disease, or had kind of hemorrhaging or anything like this, where he could have died, and my whole life would have gone to a murder. I could have been murdered, the kid, just because I was mad about getting punched in the face in the backyard. And so
It's just
That's
not
the only
worth
reason
it.
I share
Yeah,
this.
it's only not worth. It's really not worth it. I mean, we all get upset about stuff. Just better to walk away.
100%. And it's easier to say than do.
Yeah.
Like it,
Especially when you're a teenager.
because my
someone's
mom
trying
would
to
have told
punk
me
you.
like walk away, but I was like, oh no, hell no.
How many people lived in your town?
A pretty
What was
decent
the size
size. I
of it?
graduated high school like 400 or 500 people.
Okay, but
It's a pretty
still, it's
decent
like
size.
small town.
Yeah, it had a small it had a small feel. Everybody knew everybody. You knew like some of the cops, like somebody's dad was a chief, this and that. So
I feel like that's the same.
this is
small town. When
suburbs.
you-
You know, my wife, on the other hand, she graduated like 43. She lived in rural Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So different, not that small.
just drinking and fighting, and it's
Stupid
just like
shit.
one of those things.
yeah,
that-
yeah. Well, I mean, that's just how it is. Yeah, there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So you're just causing trouble.
Yes.
Yeah, so long story short, I ended up getting 2 charges. I get 2 felonies and 2 misdemeanors, and the felonies were for assault with a deadly weapon and burglary 1. I didn't steal anything, but I walked in the premises right when I walked in the front door. And so when I did this, boom, I hit the guy. He kind of like starts scrapping with me. I hand off the tire iron. I start scrapping with the kid, and he's just bleeding all over me. And then I throw him off me on the ground, and I get up, and then right at the front door, the cops are like, "Get on the fucking ground," because somebody else had called the cops back, and they were there immediately. So I went to county jail. That's all I did is I went to county jail, and my parents were completely devastated, right? Like you'd already gotten a couple fights before that we've had the cops called on you. You were already partying. Like, what is our son doing? I have a few uncles, their siblings that have gone down the road of prison and like trouble. And my parents being very straight-laced people were like, we never wanted to be like them. Now
Were you
our
an only
son's
child?
going to be like them. I have a younger sister. I paved her way in high school. Nobody fucked with her. I can tell you that because she became a freshman when I got out, and everybody's like, dude, your brother almost killed somebody. So she was fine.
So after this, you end up going to jail for a hot minute. I won't say you get out of it, but you get out.
I mean,
your
a hot
parents
minute.
bail
Like,
you
I
out.
don't want to tell people I have some prison story or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally like an overnighter. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
So then you get out, you go through the whole process. At that point, were you like, I've got to make a big change? Or was it later?
Yeah, yes and no. Kind of like, dude, I mean, I was still in high school, so I had to go back to school. So I had to go back to classes, and the story, I think, I was like, I got to make a big change, but you're still 17. I mean, I'm still blind, still extremely blind to like what kind of changes I need to make.
You're still bulletproof.
Yeah, still bulletproof. Like,
nothing's gonna
it didn't get me
happen.
that
Yeah.
time. Who knows what's going to happen? I
Yeah.
was scared, but like consequences weren't super real yet. And at this time, this is in 2005, into 2005. And I was a senior in high school. And so at that time, as most people know, the war in Iraq was kicking off full bore. So, I mean, there was the Battle of Fallujah was going on in 04. We had Ramadi in 05. And I had already kind of pre-thought through, like, me wanting to join. And in the summers, I was working for my dad in construction. And so I had a guy that I was working with doing trim carpentry. And he was like, dude, you should join the Marines. You should join the Marines. And so when I went back to school, though, all the rumors started flying around. They're like, dude, you killed the guy. And I didn't know, right? I hit the kid, and then I go to jail, and then I get out on bail, and then that's it. And so I'm like, oh, dude, if I killed him, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like that is when I got checked. Like when people in school started spreading rumors of things that I didn't know if were true or not, the severity of the situation.
So how long did you think that he was dead?
me.
Like how long did that go by?
I mean, I started like researching. I'm sorry. I started researching it and kind of asking questions quickly, reaching out to people. So I found out pretty quick. But it was at that time, I'm like, you're stuck in class. Someone's like, dude, I heard that guy die, this and that. And you're like, bro, this could go totally wrong, right? And so to fast forward a little bit, I reached out to the Marine Corps recruiter because the guy that I was working with in the summer had told me about joining the Marines.
But you can't actually join while you're still in school, right? You have to finish high school, right?
You got to finish high school.
Okay.
Yeah. So I that was like the end of the year. So you know how like the back 3 months or 2 months of high school is when you're a senior. It's pretty much just jacking around. You know what I mean? Getting your stuff done and whatnot. And I was also hardly at high school because 50% of the time I was doing auto body and collision. So I was working on cars doing auto body and collision. And so I go and I start talking to the recruiter, and I pre-warn him. I'm like, hey, this is what's going on with me. I'm just letting you know. I want to join the Marines. I'm thinking about joining the Marines, but I have this situation. And he's like, okay, all right. He goes, well, let's see what we can do. He was willing to work with me. I didn't ever talk to an Army recruiter. I didn't talk to anybody else. I just went straight to the Marines.
I was wanting to know why you picked the Marines.
Yeah, so it's funny because in my head when I was young, I wanted to be like an airborne ranger. I wanted to jump out of planes. I don't know why. I just always wanted to like do extreme shit, like jump out of planes and do all this stuff. And
Adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, 100%.
If you're a convicted felon, do they let you in the Marines, or how they
No.
don't?
So I wasn't convicted. I was just charged.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the charge is pending. So I never got convicted. Nothing was convicted.
So is that what the let's work with you was?
Yeah, that's like, yeah, let's work this out. Exactly. Yeah. And so
I didn't know that you couldn't join if you were a convicted felon.
Oh
I've
yeah, you
heard
can't
that
do it in the
before,
military
yeah.
at all if you're a convicted felon.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Used to-
But there were a ton of waivers that were going into the Marine Corps in all branches at that time because
Especially because we were going to
they
war.
were doing their push. Yeah, so they had a ton of troops that were shipping overseas to the Iraq push.
So when
during-
if we're during war, that sometimes they'll overlook some of these things to
it's
get people to
essentially
enlist.
like anything else in the government. If they want to change the rules in the map, then they can change the rules on the map.
Yeah, well,
And
thank
so that's
God
what they do.
you went before you actually had the charges.
It would be totally
you know?
different now. Yeah, yeah. Well, I never got the charges, so I never got charged. I was never convicted.
Yeah.
Only charged with it. So I went to the recruiter. The recruiter went with my attorney to the judge multiple times, and they negotiated essentially like if Austin gets out with an honorable discharge or if he enlists in the Marine Corps and follows through, then they'll be expunged. And so that's what happened. So my charges were expunged.
Did you have to sign a certain amount of long length of contract or?
No, I think it was just kind of like a good old boy situation. I mean, it's all vague to me at this point now, and I've told this story on a couple of veteran podcasts as well, and they're like, "That's not how it is. That's not how it is." I'm like, "Well, they literally can make up the rules right there in court. Like they're gonna be like,
It's the government. They make up a lot of shit.
All I can tell you is that's what happened to me. That's my life. It's literally what happened.
So how long were you in total?
I was in 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, so 2006.
So tell us
to
what that was.
2010.
Tell us what that was like. Where'd you go? What'd you do?
Yeah. So my MOS was 0352, and what that is an infantryman. So I enlisted in the infantry, and I was an anti-tank assaultman. So my job skill essentially was to shoot missiles at tanks and blow them up. But in Iraq, in 2006 and 2007, 2008, there's no more
What's
tanks.
going on?
No, there's nothing like that. And so when we did deploy in 2007 and 2008, I ended up doing personal security details. So I worked with VIPs. Like I have a photo of me shaking hands with Senator McCain during the presidential
saw that.
elections in the soccer fields with a machine gun on my lap at 19 years old. And we did security for the battalion commander and battalion sergeant major. And so that was awesome. So that's kind of a fast forward, right? From 2006, join the Marine Corps, get in. And the Marine Corps was the best thing for me, man, at that time. Like I would have probably gone to college because my dad was really heavy on college. He would have like pushed me to do that. I didn't want to go, but I feel like, I don't know, I could have said, I obviously did what I did, but I feel like he was so my dad's an engineer, and a very conservative, household. He became, successful doing what he's doing. And in his mind, just probably like most people,
College equals success.
College equals success, which is our, parents' generation, if you will. And so I was going to be a nobody if I didn't even get a college degree, essentially. And that's how I felt, at least. And I kind of proved him wrong now. But at the time, I wasn't proving him right. You know what I'm saying? With my track
So
record.
did they agree at that time that was the best thing for you to do? Just to get out away from these friends and...
Yeah, exactly. So my parents were like, you're going to go to college. You're going to go to college. You're going to do this. And I'm like 17. I'm like, no, I'm not. And so I went to Oklahoma Christian University for one semester. So
Okay.
I went to...
So you didn't immediately go into the Marines?
No,
or were you
well,
doing
'cause-
both?
Yeah, well, while so the period of me getting in trouble to the period of me like joining the Marine Corps, there's like the court and the negotiations between my attorney and the recruiter and all that. So it's like 6 months. Well, 6 months, perfect time. So I just went to school right after I got graduated.
So you go to the
next year.
Marines. You're gone for 4 years. You get
I
out. Why
go-
did you stop at 4 years? Why didn't you continue? What happened next?
I just a lot of bureaucracy. Being in the military was just as my previous history kind of determines. I don't like to be told what to do, so that's what a lot of.
Same.
Even though I was in the Marine
Same.
Corps, I still didn't like being told. I understand
I still think it's good for a young man that's
it is very
Sucking up.
doesn't know what he wants to do.
absolutely
Discipline
absolutely. And I still preach that hardcore. That was
Yeah.
the best place for me because what happened was I was deemed this bad. I mean, I had this persona, this bad kid that was drinking and fighting and doing all these bad things and going to get himself down a rabbit hole. Because essentially, if I wouldn't have joined the Marine Corps, I was looking at 6 months to a year in a juvenile delinquent center. Because when I committed the crime, I was 17 years old, so I was a youthful offender, not an adult. So even though I had turned 18, I'd rolled over during that time, I was a youthful offender. So I wasn't going to go to prison. I was going to go to juvenile delinquent center.
I thought 17 was considered an adult.
No, 18 at the time.
So you go for 4 years. You don't like to be told what to do. You're good with the discipline. We already know you had that already.
Yeah.
So that probably wasn't the most difficult part. It was just,
Correct.
the day-to-day not really having control.
Yeah, it was. And I enjoyed being deployed. I enjoyed actually doing the job, right, in the Marine Corps and going to Iraq and doing those type of things versus being back stateside and then putting up monotonous and just being told what to do by people that I didn't feel like were more, educated than me at some points. I respect the sergeants and respect the leadership and respect the rank, but there's just certain points where I was like, this just isn't going
Not
to
for
be
me.
where I want to go. Yeah.
So you're 21-ish at this point,
I got out at 21 and 22. Mhm.
and you just go straight back to Oklahoma at this point.
I did. Yep.
Okay, so did you get right back into that rat race that you were in before? Did you connect with those old friends, or did you start making changes then?
I had some good changes then, but I did still go. I struggled after that. So, I mean, 4 years of being in the Marines and doing my thing, I struggled with like feeling like I went back 10 steps.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I did all this stuff. I had all these accolades. I lived this exciting life. And then you go back and now I'm working for my dad again in construction.
Felt like you're behind or something.
I felt, well, I just felt like it
Feeling
was like
antsy.
boring.
Yeah,
Yeah,
feeling
like antsy. Good point. Yeah, now I'm running a skid steer and I'm welding and like this I was very upset. Like, this is my life. Like, this is what it looks like, and I wanted more, but I didn't know how or what to do. So I started seeking out more similar negative things, definitely heavily drinking and doing that. I wasn't married. So, all sorts of vices and, going down rabbit holes of hanging out with my buddies that were pipeline welders, the bars. And then I ended up going to Sankey's rodeo school in Rose Hill, Kansas, and rode bulls for a small period of time.
So random.
It is,
Well, I was like, I was working with my buddy that's a welder.
Yeah.
And
That's what he was doing.
and he's like, hey, dude, we should go do this. Because he's kind of into the cowboy scene. A lot of welders are, And I was like, well, shoot, okay, I'll give it a whirl. And he ended up, of course, just like most people, falling out and not committing. I had already signed up and paid. And I was like,
You're
I'm
like,
going
fuck
by
it, I'm going all
myself
the way.
then. Hell yeah, it's only a 2-hour drive. I'll go up there. And so I did. I went to that school. And that was fun. That was an adrenaline rush. And so I had my little cowboy era. It was fun. but I essentially, and that's when I met my wife, was in that little era and Lost and stuff. But, I was like you said, searching for something more. I was adrenaline seeking and trying to fill this almost anxiety. I never really analyzed it like that, but you talked about that, Sean, and almost anxiety of like
ADHD can't sit still. That's
this is it. This is it. This is what my life looks like. I can just see it. And so another thing though that the Marine Corps gave me that I felt like my friends didn't have and that a lot of people didn't have when I came back, my parents, everybody, is it gave me perspective on life. Like, I mean, I saw so much over there in general of just like, and so people here take life for granted and they just think they have so much time. And I realized
we're
how
so
quickly,
inconvenienced here because we don't have power this week. You're like, you see people who literally don't have running water. You know what I mean? Living on the side of the
you
road.
get massive perspective, and when you get that perspective, you're like, oh, life can be taken in a split instance. And so you're like, I feel behind that I haven't accomplished X by this time, or I'm not doing this by this time, and said all these things. And so,
but I think that's a motivation to drive you to do something else. When you start feeling that way, you're like, I got to hurry up, speed it up.
I feel like
go to
that
the
way
next
every
thing.
day right now.
Sean feels like he's
I still feel that way.
no, he feels like he's a fucking loser if he doesn't buy a new building every single week. I'm like, can you like stop for 5 seconds?
No, that's good.
But
That's
the older
good.
you get too, people start having health problems and like you take it for granted. And so I feel like I need to do a lot of stuff before in this short life I have left.
I don't remember if it
Same
was
here.
on a podcast or if it was in person. We were talking about something, but someone was saying, I think it was on the podcast yesterday, that, we work so fucking hard to save all of our pennies, working in the same job for, not really anymore, but back in the day, our parents, for 30, 40 years to have 7 years of unhealthy life.
Yeah.
Before that's it, you're gone.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
65.
To enjoy your
yeah.
retirement,
Yeah.
But Sean's always like pushing. He wants to do everything in his life. He doesn't want to look back when he's 80 and be regretful that he didn't do something. So every idea that he has, he feels like boom, we'll do it next day. Start it.
I love that. I mean, I'm the same way. I totally agree with that. That's massive. I mean, that's why I just moved. You know what I mean? I mean, most people are like, why?
Purpose, right? You
Yeah,
wake up
why?
and you have
What?
like
I'm I
some
have a
purpose
calling.
every day.
I want to
yeah.
do this. Purpose. Yeah. I'm driven to it. I want it.
I feel like I'm going to skip part of your story, but how did you end up in San Diego?
Yeah. No. So when I spent time in the Marine Corps out there I was at boot camp.
I
which wasn't
knew there
much,
was some
but-
sort of link to Marines in San Diego.
Yeah, and then I was in School of Infantry out there. I fell in love with it, And
weather
as
is
a
just
young
so fucking
guy
great.
that was getting in trouble and stuff, before Instagram and social media was really a thing, I was looking at all the magazines. I told you I was in cars as an auto body collision. So who were the main places? West Coast. I was watching Jesse James on TV.
I watched that too.
I was watching all of that stuff. And so I was like, dude, I got to get out there. I want to go out there. That's legit. That's my vibe. And so I ultimately came back home to Edmond, Oklahoma, and then fortunately, finally made the switch back over there, which was kind of crazy and wild because I'd built a business and multiple businesses and a family and my own homes multiple times, and people thought I was crazy. But I mean, you know what? That's all right.
So it took you 8 years to get out there, ish.
Longer than that. Is that the math?
How old are you now? 37-ish?
I'm 37.
you
Yeah,
got
because
out.
I got out 2010, and yeah.
So how did you get into real estate? Because we know you're a real estate guru. You have a lot of investments in real estate.
Yeah.
What kind of real estate are you in, and how did you get into that?
Sure. So right when I got out, I went back to working for my dad, and I started. I had a buddy.
Trim
at the
carpenter
gym.
still?
Almost a jack of all trades. So he was kind of like the guy that cleaned up. So my dad was building homes and also had a concrete company. And so the building home side, he needed his handyman guy this is actually a high school friend of his that I worked for, and we would do everything from trim carpentry to pouring concrete, everything. thing you have to do, as you know, talking about building
Yep.
homes, that there's a massive punch list at the end, and none of the subs want to go do those little things. And so we became the guys that fixed all of that.
I like
You
it. We
know?
need some guys on our portfolio
It's
that
the
do
hardest
that.
part.
Yeah, it's the hardest person to find.
Because I'm really good at fine tooth combing everything at the end, and I'm like sending him lists, and he never
Yeah,
looks at
he's
the
like,
fucking
"Who am I
lists,"
gonna
and
have
I'm
do
like,
this?
dude, I know we try to work together. We GC all of our projects, but yeah, I'm definitely a fine tooth comber. But he likes to do the big stuff, but he doesn't like to tie it all up. So that's my job.
That's
So
the
I'm a
hardest
tie
part.
rubber.
is
But
tying
we
it
need
up.
someone else, not me, to do it.
That's what I used to do, like physically do it, And I mean, I've done all of it working for my dad. All right. So when we would have concrete stuff, I was running skid steers, and I learned
I
taught
don't know
myself
what
how
a
to weld.
skid steer is.
Like a bobcat,
It's like a the
like
little
a tractor,
Got it.
like a tractor.
A good old John Deere.
Kind of not. I don't know. Not like farm stuff. Like construction tractor. Think of it that way.
Okay, got it. So you're working for dad, doing time.
I'm
on that final
disgruntled.
thing.
I'm not happy. I was
So you're not
traveling
even
the world of
enjoying that.
Marines. I'm not enjoying this. I'm going down a rabbit hole that I was going down before, which is just drinking and doing the wrong thing. I met my wife. That helped me out a lot. She moved in with me, kicked my roommate out, ended up getting married. And then I had buddies at the gym that were like, dude, you know everything about construction. Why don't you just start building? And so I was like, yeah, you're right. So first thing I did is I was still working for him, and I told him, I was like, hey, I'm going to start building. And I want to actually do this. And he's like, okay, well, you can check in your projects after you're done with all of your work here. And I built a spec house. So I built I think it was like a $350,000 spec house. He helped me co-sign on the loan to do it.
That's what I
yeah,
was
I couldn't
gonna
get
ask.
it.
Yeah, so
couldn't
we
get the dirt
And
myself.
what about
no
the
way.
down payment too?
Yeah. So on the lot itself, we just had to, if I remember right, on that specific deal, he just had to co-sign on it because
well,
of the ARV
land
of
loans,
it.
if there's no house on it, are like normally 50%
Well, but
down, right?
you're borrowing construction and land at the same time, so you're
Okay.
closing on everything
got
at
it.
one time, right?
I can't remember honestly.
Yeah.
To be honest, somebody would have had to put cash down on that lot, unless you build yourself up. Like I got to a point where I didn't have to anymore, depending on how I underwrote it later. But yeah, I think he had to put money down on that.
I was about to say, just for people listening,
He
when
was
they
like a
first get into
$40,000
something.
lot, and I think you're right. I think he had to put
$40,000
like 20.
lot. Because that wasn't much for the lot.
No. Well, that was when land was way different. Yeah, $40,000 lot.
So what year was this in?
This is in 2014.
Okay, so it was after the 2008-9 situation.
Yes.
So you get the lot, and this is your first build.
My first build.
Who was
Yep.
holding your hand through this? Who was your mentor?
My dad helped me. Yeah, my dad helped me. So
So getting the plans,
pros
getting
and
the
cons
engineering.
with working with family, I can tell you that right now, especially an engineer.
Yeah, we
things
don't-
that are important to
we
him.
don't do that anymore.
Engineers.
Things that are
that's
important to
tough.
him don't sell houses sometimes, right? Like cosmetics and stuff sell houses, but things that are done right and 2x6s, double insulation, and all that is what they want to sell. And anyways, so I learned my lessons on that. But I was very grateful for the opportunity. Like by all means, I would never say I wasn't. I was extremely grateful because the person at the gym that had told me, hey, you need to step out and you can go do your own thing, was like, I'll back you and I'll help you and I'll partner with you on it like a
Okay.
traditional way. He was a real estate investor. So he was going to like 50-50 split it with me and the profit, and I was going to do it. And I proposed that to my dad, and my dad's like, I'll do the same with you, but you can keep the profit. And I'm not going to basically screw you over. I'm your dad. So I was like, okay, that's fair. I'm like, I'll take that deal. So that's what I did.
So you said the lot was $40,000.
Yeah.
What did you spend on the house, and what did it sell for? Or did you hold?
Oh man. So if I remember right, I don't know. That's my very first one. I sold it for, if I remember correctly, like 360-ish. And I made 45,000 net.
Okay, so you turned a profit on it. That's
Yeah,
great for your
so
first one.
that was the epiphany of how money can be made. I mean, that was like the all in. What, this is insane, because working for him, I was making less annually than $45,000.
And you already had so much knowledge in the construction industry, but do you remember your biggest lesson learned in that first project? I mean, because it's pretty impressive that you turned that much money on your first one.
Yeah, I remember we did one right after that, and I didn't make as much profit on it. So my quick lesson was like, hey, you can hang on to these longer than you want to, and you can make less. And I think I made 20, so it was a good lesson to learn, still making money. But I realized real quick, like, oh, you can make zero or pay in.
Was there any big lessons that lost a lot of money on either one of those deals? in the
All
beginning?
on that one and the next. So on my first one, second one, and third one, I made money on all of them, but I learned good lessons. And so lessons I was learning were different subs to use, different caliber of stuff to use. You can overbuild it. That was one thing that, getting guidance from my engineer father, it was definitely being overbuilt on certain standards.
You're like, look at this motherfucker.
Yeah. Well, the first one was the most profitable, and the one he helped me with, and the other ones he didn't.
No, it's crazy. It's the things they really should care about. Like he does the spray foam insulation, which is really going to save. Like our house
100%,
now
I love
is
it.
100-year-old house. Our electric bill, we don't even know what our electric bill is because we have an assistant that pays that now, but I know it's way cheaper than what we were paying for a house that was half the size, same year. That, I mean, when we would lose power, the house would instantly be 100 degrees in there.
Yeah.
But things like that really do matter. Ventilation
huge.
that saves on your electric bill on the long term. They don't care about that. They want to have good countertops.
Yeah, the average people. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
They care about the wrong things.
they do.
Having
They
a
do.
good looking bathroom and kitchen.
Yeah.
So how many properties do you own now?
So we own roughly around 70.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And are those single family
They're all
homes?
single. I have one fourplex and I have a commercial. My old office.
How'd you transition from new construction into the single family?
That's something I thought it was funny because you guys have had multiple people on with new construction. I've watched some of the
Yeah,
podcasts
Eric,
before, and Eric's been on, and then I think there was another gal. That
Oh, do you
was
know Eric?
customs.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I
follow
know.
him
I
already?
met him. Yeah, I've talked
Okay.
to him. I
Yeah,
met him
he's
in
awesome,
Dallas.
dude.
And
he's a really good guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Erin is a super popular builder here in Houston. She's great.
right.
Yeah,
right.
we followed her for a while. Actually, she found me first. I didn't even know. She was following me. I'm like, who is this chick? She's got a ton of followers. And I started watching her, and I learned. Do you follow her yet?
No, not yet.
You got to
Oh, yeah,
follow
you
her.
should
She's got
follow
some.
her. She's great,
The cosmetics look great.
I mean,
the
she's
things
doing
is awesome.
$5 to $10 million homes, and her
Wow.
attention to detail. Why don't we have her contract? And I told her, and I was like, you should come see her house. I was like, just kidding. Don't come see her
Don't
house.
critique
You'll
my
pick it
house.
apart.
I
Yeah,
see
but
it.
she's so good. Like all the little details, the things that we fuck up on, because Sean's always like, go, 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 go. I'm like, no. Put a sample down. I mean, the way she does it's like puts 3 samples down. It's a week, 2 weeks later. I'm like, that's why her house takes 2 or 3 years to build. But that's how they build such good.
What she
construction.
did, what she's doing is essentially what I got into. So what I did is I built those houses, and then I got a few customs off of them. And then I started gearing up even more. And when I got the customs, I was like, oh, because I quit working for my dad, right? When I got the customs and stuff and I'd made some money, I was like, hey, I'm done. I'm going to go do my own thing full time.
So you're working with your dad on all of these projects?
No, I quit working for him.
Oh,
so I
okay.
quit
So
working
before you
labor
started.
for him, essentially. Yeah, and I went on these. No, not all these. So that was only the first one, and then I'd made the money, and I was able to start working on my own, take that capital, reinvest it, and buy the next land, and do it again and again. And so I got customs off of that. But the way I was doing customs was cost plus, right? So I would get the property, and everything's on them. So they carry the note, they carry the land, they carry everything, and then I'm cost plus. We have a joint checking account where we're both signers on the checking account, and then they'll have a draw, and the draw will
great.
deposit. And
So
then
they can see
we'll-
every transaction that's happening, every check that's being written.
Correct. Yeah. Very, very transparent and clear. And it was good. It's good that way. It was the way I was taught once I got onto the board
I
of
think
directors.
every person should do that, because that's what I keep
No
saying
liability,
is a problem,
right?
is that people, when they're building these first, and they don't have a bookkeeper, they don't have anyone doing
Yeah,
that.
we're
They
doing
use
it.
QuickBooks,
Yeah.
and they get fucked over. And one of the things even Erin said on her podcast was I lost, what was it, like $5,000 on one of my first houses because I didn't know how much money. It's like money in, money out, hope for the best, not really know where anything's going. So I like the cost plus thing.
Yeah, and I was fortunate. Like I said, my dad built before, so I kind of saw some things not to do
Yeah.
to do. And then I got into Central Oklahoma Home Builders Association. I got on the board of directors, so I was getting good advice from people that have been doing it a long time. But the thing the reason I started becoming more resentful and getting hard about custom homes, and I'd built it up to where we were doing high 7 figures. We were doing lots of projects. We were doing $700 to $1.6 million houses. And in Oklahoma at that time, in 2016, 2017, those are
8,000 square
those
foot
are
houses.
they're seriously, like, we're doing exactly what you just said she did. We're doing multiple samples. I've had architects come down from Dallas to design plans for people that the plans cost $60,000, and so we were doing high end stuff. And but it's a very time consuming job. I mean, I'm working one on one with this couple, with these people building their home, and it is usually their most expensive investment. It is their bread and butter. She has this opinion, he has this opinion. These things are
You're
important.
their
to him.
marriage counselor.
I'm a marriage counselor. And fortunately, I built up a team where I have a designer, architect, and everybody involved, but it's still like herding cats, right? Now you have all these subcontractors coming in, and people don't understand. This is the biggest hurdle that we have a lot of times in that style of construction, is people don't understand that these are all people making these things, and nothing is perfect. It's not an off-the-shelf product. This is a man-made thing from the dirt to conceptualization. And so when you're going into that detail of like the wallpaper, and like similar to you guys have in the studio, and some people are spending crazy amounts of money on wallpaper and tile that's flown in, and when you're doing that kind of stuff, like, there's so many people involved, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and
nobody double checks anything in construction.
no, they don't. No,
Ever.
I don't feel like the subs even think ahead a lot of the time. So you find a sub
I try to
that does,
verbalize
it's
it and then
amazing.
follow up with a text message, so I have it right there circled. This is what I told you to do.
It's like,
this is
yeah,
what
we'll
you
get
did.
to it.
This is your cost. They never want to cover it, so you end up having to cover it anyway.
Yeah.
So what made you go from doing specs to finding?
I didn't
how
want to
did
do
you
it anymore.
find-
I was getting burnt out. I've done houses for attorneys. I've done houses for doctors, for surgeons. Oil and gas was huge. Like people that had, got out of companies and done really well for themselves.
You knew not to take on the engineers because of your dad.
Other than my dad, yeah, I know. I already knew that. I grew up that lifestyle. So
I know he had one. He's like, oh fuck, he's an engineer. I can't do
yeah,
it.
yeah, oh yeah. And so
Super
I was
particular.
like,
Their mind just works a different way. It's
totally
yeah.
different way. Totally different way.
So you
And
went from doing specs to like having. How did you start getting clients that you were building for from the start? Like
so
ground
when
up?
I would build those houses, so I would do like something unique or they'd like it, and then one person would be like, well, I really like this. Could you build it on our lot? Can you build it on our land? And so that's kind of how it started, and then just marketing a little bit. I'd put my advertisement in the Parade of Homes magazine,
So
and then
you
I
were
started
marketing
doing
it.
the Parade of Homes, and then I did what's called the Street of Dreams. The Street of Dreams is a new development neighborhood, a new high-end development neighborhood, and you build like 6 or 8 builders build spec houses in it, and it's like the top of the top. So I built like $1 million spec.
We
in
have
this
one of those
neighborhood.
here.
Yeah, I think
Open
Texas
this
does
spring.
have them. Yeah, and
It's
like
actually pretty cool that they can go walk each one of the specs
exactly what
and
it
figure
is.
out which builder they want to work with.
That's exactly right.
And it's, I don't know, I want to say the Field of Dreams, but some
It's
kind
the
of
Street
very
of
similar
Dreams.
name
Yeah,
like that too.
yeah.
And pick out which finishings they want, just like you would. But it's more structured than a regular neighborhood with spec houses throughout.
It's usually like a very like high end. It's the top of the top. Like you're putting on the show, right? It's the most bespoke custom spec house you can get essentially.
So how many were you building at a time?
We didn't do a lot of volume, so I mean, we got up to 7 houses in 2021, and that was when I was
still
like,
that's
I'm out.
that's a lot. Running 7
7
projects at one
customs,
time with custom homes.
Yeah, I had a partner when I did the Street of Dreams. I got a partner because I wanted to diversify the liability because I was doing $1 million spec, and at that time I was 31, and so I was like, I just don't want to sit on this. And then I also built another $1 million house for the Parade of Homes. So I had 2 specs, and that's when I got my lesson on like,
How do you get your money back
Going
from the
all
Parade of
in.
Homes at that point? I mean, do they require you to keep it there for a certain amount of years before you can sell it?
which one, the Parade of Homes?
Or
No,
or do they tear down that one? I mean, because the way it's built, it's not in a neighborhood. The way I'm talking about it, it's like on a
Yeah, I
street.
think
main
that's
street.
something different that we have here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, so yeah, ours aren't like teardowns and rebuilds. It's like a new development. Everything's in a new development. So it's just ground.
When you have the spec home, I mean, how long do you have to sit on it there? So your $1 million is wrapped up in the spec home to sell more homes.
Gotcha.
So
You
it's
can
sitting
sell it
there.
during
Can
the
you
show.
sell it?
You can sell it during
Okay.
the show. I mean,
Okay.
it takes 30 to 45 days to close
Oh,
anyway.
well, that's still great.
Yeah, you can sell it. You can pre-sell it. You can't like close on it and sell it to the owner before the show is over, essentially, because you've told them you're going to market it and bring people through it. Yeah, but your objective is to sell it through the show.
So that year was really good for you then.
No,
It wasn't?
That's
So
2018 is when I learned my lesson. Is like
okay.
I had 2 specs sitting, so I had the one with a partner and I had one by myself. And I was living in my own house, and I was 31 years old, and I was like, dude, I got a lot of money out there, and I'm making all these payments, and I'm like, this is when you want to talk about the real side of entrepreneurship and trying something that you don't know much about. And I had 2 kids at that time, 13 months apart. They're like babies. And I was like, dude, this was a mistake because this is a lot of expenses to roll. Even though I still had some customs going, that's what's keeping me afloat.
So what was your monthly expenses on these houses?
Gosh, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Like
I want to say
$10,000, $15,000
oh
or
yeah,
more?
easily $10,000, $15,000. Yeah, just for those. That
Sean's been
alone.
in that position.
I
I think it might have been the same
lessons.
year. Was it a little bit 14?
14-ish.
Yeah,
He had 2 million plus houses at the same time.
Yeah.
5
I'm sure
$2 million houses?
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty close. And so I started moving into them one by one.
yeah, that's exactly what I did. I moved.
It's not selling. I guess I'm going to
I
move
did
out
the
of my
same thing.
apartment. Yeah.
That's hilarious. You said that. That's exactly what I did. So
I was thinking the
I
same
put all
thing.
3 up. Mine, the other 2, and of course mine
Whatever sells
sold.
first, yeah.
And we moved to the next one, and then that one sold.
Exactly what
I
happened to
made
me.
I made over 6 figures on the next one. So I was like, I made great money on mine. I made great money on the next one, and then the one my partner and I did, which we blew out for the Street of Dreams, I paid like $68,000 at the closing table to get
Overbuilt
rid of
it
it.
and
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
Yeah, it was bad. So I was like, there goes half that.
So then at 2018, you're thinking, okay, now I got rid of these 3 specs. What do I do now? Were you
But
thinking
what
about
happened
leaving? Were you
was
thinking about
my
leaving?
partner and I, when we did that Street of Dreams, people came to us and wanted us to build customs. So the marketing, I guess, worked, right? We were doing great. People were like, you guys are great. We want you to build our home. So I started doing customs with him, and we were doing it.
But were you thinking at this point, should I even move forward with this, or are the customs you
I
felt
was
comfortable
still
with
all
this was
in.
a cost plus?
I was still like in my mind all in. At the same time, simultaneously, I'm like, I gotta do investing too, and so I gotta learn something about this. I've read the gateway drug to real estate investing, which is Rich Dad Poor Dad. Right? I was reading the book, and I was like, how do I do more? How do I understand how to do business without it being, so emotional? And that was what drew me to real estate investing, is that everything what I was building, custom homes, are very emotional decisions. It's a lot of people involved.
That is still a job.
It's a full-time job. It's more than a full-time job, like you said. Exactly.
As a
You're always
psychiatrist.
chasing your
Yeah,
next,
as a psychiatrist. Yeah,
Part-time builder,
underpaid.
full-time a psychiatrist.
you're always chasing your next deal. And so if you do investing at some point,
Well, you essentially, I mean, the truth is, like, you learn how to make your own money. Like, because when you're banking on people to give you a job, you're just searching for the next person to give you a job. People are like, I own my own business, but you're just looking for somebody else to sign a contract so that you can start building it for them. So that's the difference, And then specs, I didn't want to do any specs. I've learned my lesson on the specs like we just talked about, because in my area in Oklahoma, you could sit on a spec. And I was like, I gotta have some other exit strategies. So I started learning about other exit strategies. I started learning about not just having a house that's just sitting there hoping to sell. Like, that's a gamble. Like, what's speculative investment
Especially
mean?
big ticket stuff. This is not a $200,000 house where
No.
nothing that you
And
can
in
cover.
Oklahoma, right, if I did a $200,000 house, I could have at least rented it out.
Yep.
I could have done something else with it, but I didn't have that knowledge at the time. And so that's why I'm so hardcore on telling people that understanding the investing side is really important, even when whatever business you're doing. You know what I mean?
For the long term, for sure.
Yeah,
So then
yeah.
what's your
But
next
we
step? Buy
wound
a piece
up-
of shit houses that are already
so
done.
We
and
flew. Like, so when my partner and I, we flew. We did lots of high end. We were doing them together, like I was saying, big numbers on them. And then what happened was 2020. And so 2020 came, and it gave me my opportunity to start using my knowledge that I was gaining in real estate investing, and to start buying shit boxes and rehabbing
Shit
them
boxes.
and
Like-
and making them new, and then either holding the properties or flipping and selling them. And so sure, that was a hard transition for me, because I'm going from Mr. Magazine ego parade home builder, working with people
Level
of the
one
caliber of
granite.
yourself, you know what I'm saying, like
to level
high-end
one granite
people,
and Home Depot
to-
cabinets.
to literally having to like
Trying to be efficient and
Yeah.
make the
No, it's
properties
really
look
hard.
Totally
It's
correct.
really
different
hard to go
thought process.
backward, because this is like your heart and soul, because you have emotion into it, and you want the best of the best, and you're like, oh god, this is fucking hurting my soul to put these cabinets in here.
Exactly.
But I think it's what also makes you successful, because a lot of people that do these flipping, they put the absolute worst, or they're doing it themselves and they don't know what the fuck they're doing, and it looks like trash. Sean would go in there and buy these houses for $75,000, $80,000, literally from there's a guy who markets around here. We buy ugly houses. Sean would
Yeah,
call
yeah.
him up, what you got?
Yeah, wholesalers.
And he'd buy these things for like $30,000, $40,000 sometimes. I mean, things that should be condemned and torn
100%.
down. And he would put stuff that looked really good. He learned how to make stuff look really good for really cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot
You
of people
need to
don't
get
know
creative.
how to make that stuff look good.
Yeah. So it's a mindset shift too. And also for the ego though, because I ended up owning like 4 or 5 rentals, but I kind of had a pompous attitude about it. I'm like, it's $700 a month. This lady ain't paying. This is stupid. I'm making X amount of money on
I
all
know.
these bills.
It feels like not
and,
enough with the shit you have to
this
deal
is- why am I wasting my time on this? But
So let's talk about that a little bit more too, because I want people to really understand. Because there's a lot of people who are watching that are wanting to get into this and ask us a lot of questions, like, what is it like having renters? When did you hire a property manager? So you have 4 at this point, and you're managing them yourself.
yeah, we were all managing ourselves for sure. My wife and I, right, together.
So you're taking the phone calls at midnight when someone's light bulb won't turn on.
Yeah. And what happened
Or
was
they flush a tampon.
something people talk about all the time, and I'd like to tell people this. Section 8, right? So like, Section 8, it's this wonderful drug where the government's going to pay the bills, and you don't have to deal with anything. And if they do bad, the government's going to kick them out. That's not how it is. So it is a good tool. Section 8 is a great tool to utilize, and affordable housing is a great tool to start growing. But people need to know that the government's not on your side of the table when tenant B decides to break the front door off and they have a reinspection. They're going to ask you to come fix it. And if you don't fix it and you don't fix these things in the home, what they'll do is they'll put the house in abatement. And so when they put it in abatement,
I don't know what
essentially
that
they
means.
won't make the payments anymore.
Oh,
They're like,
okay.
you didn't fix the home. And I'll be like, well, do you remember when they moved in that the door on the front was actually there? And so now that the tenant's torn it off, you want me to go and fix it for them because it's inhabitable. And they're like, yeah, no, that's exactly what we want you to do. And so I was like, fuck you. I'm not going to fix it. And so just the government stopped making the payments.
So were these the duplexes you were
These
talking
are
about?
the single families. Yeah, that I had. Yeah. And so
I didn't know
I was like,
just
screw
plain
it. Let the
single-family
let the
homes.
lease
I thought
run
they were
out.
all like kind of like apartment type things. I didn't realize the Section 8 had
Section 8?
No, Section 8's for any. Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah.
it's any area. It could be single family. It could be apartment complex. It could be. It
Yeah,
could be
my
anything.
fourplex right now is all single family just because I can get like $740 for rent versus $600.
So you bought it as a Section 8 already,
No,
or
I
you
bought
turned
it.
it into
So
that?
Section 8 is essentially, people think that it's the property. It's actually the voucher of the person. So the individuals themselves are the ones that are approved by the government to get these properties. And so they can take their voucher, which is, basically the stamp that says I'm approved for the government to pay it. And then they get with the landlord and they say, will you take Section 8 payments? And then if they say yes,
So it could be a mixed.
it could be
You could have
anything.
both.
Correct. 100%. Yeah. Like at one time, my portfolio was like 25% Section 8.
So then you go from that. This is your first.
This is my first couple. And then I was like, screw it. Got rid of them. Like, this is not the right way to do it. But
So
then
how-
I went
how
and
does that- how does
educated
that work?
myself.
You just
further.
don't renew their leases at that point. You're like, we're done.
Yeah, I didn't renew their leases. Then I ended up selling the properties
Okay.
and moved out. And I was still being Mr. Builder. I still was going all in on that and growing my custom home company. And then 2020 hit. and we had quite a bit going on. Everybody didn't know what was going to happen in 2020 in general, right? But surprisingly, custom home people were like, we've had more money than we've ever had because the things are coming out, right? 2021. And so we started building these projects for people.
How did you have the cash at this point? Because you have 4. I know you probably have a lot of money tied up in these things. How did you keep continuing to get cash to get these loans, to get these, especially in 2000?
So I sold all those. So I started over with most of my rental portfolio in 2021. Okay. So I'm going back to almost zero. Yeah, on this timeline. And so the way I was getting them the first time is I was using small banks and small lenders. And so what I would do is I would buy property for 50 cents on the dollar, and I knew that it was going to appraise for, let's call it, I buy a property for 50,000. I knew that it would appraise for 100, and I would only have to put like 25 into it or $20,000 into it, and I knew the bank would give me 70% of the pre-appraised value. It's called the ARV, so the as repaired value. And so I could walk into it essentially, as long as I stayed under budget and bought the property correctly, I would have zero money into the deal.
That's great.
Yeah, and so that worked multiple times, especially in that time, right? In 2000, what was that, 2016, 17, and 18? That was
Do they
not
still give loans
uncommon.
like that or no?
They still have loans like that. I have students that get those loans in Oklahoma now. Still.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. It's just harder to find the deal that matches.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's harder to
You have
find.
to
You
get
got
a
to
really
get
good deal,
discounted
yeah.
enough.
That's how I bought everything, though. Well, I bought a lot of stuff like that, but I would have to use hard money at the time. I couldn't
These
find
were
any
like
conventional
commercial
banks.
lenders.
Okay.
Yeah, commercial lenders like, small bank of Oklahoma or whatever. And so
It almost makes you find a good deal, though, because you have to make the numbers work, right? So
it vets you. So it keeps you in the ditches. Exactly. So
I would always try to do
that.
that. Yeah, I would always try to basically make those numbers work, and if it didn't, I wouldn't.
Then I wouldn't buy it because the bank couldn't do it. I was the same way. That's how I did
That's
it.
your built-in mentor is the bank.
Well, no,
It really is. It's your underwriter.
That's how you actually had to cash flow it, and I wanted equity anyways. I didn't want to just buy something just to buy it. I wanted like something walk in with 30,000, 40,000 in equity.
Exactly what I did.
Especially when people are new to this, they can really overbuy. That's what happens a lot. They get emotional about it. They want to get started, and they just
Most people buy
make a
retail,
bad decision.
right? They just
That's
see
the
realtor and
problem.
They buy retail and they don't understand what they're looking for. And I've even had people that are like, well, this one's a piece of shit. I don't want to buy it. I'm like, yes, you do. You do want to buy the piece of shit.
That's how you create the equity.
That's how you create the equity.
He stepped in homeless person turd recently. He's like, I want it.
He's like, this is the one.
The homeless guys are in there with their camps, and
You're like, hey guys, we're gonna kick you out of the while.
It's like,
Thanks.
hi. They
Stay
said
here
fine
until
building.
closing because I don't want them to raise the price. Yeah,
that's what you're
the
definitely
only way you
looking
get
for.
deals.
it is.
Yeah,
it
really
is.
is.
Same with commercial. I mean, it's similar to commercial.
Yep.
Value add opportunity.
Yep.
So working the NOI up on commercial. But I was done with it. I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I sold my 5, whatever. I kept custom home building, and then we run it into 3 problems, and it became hell. So we're doing a lot of houses. Like I said, we got up to doing, 6, 7 multi-million-dollar houses in 2021. Like we're in the middle of them, like through COVID. And now I can't get any equipment. Labor got a massive shortage. I don't know what lumber is going to cost.
Sell the houses. You just can't finish the houses.
No, they're already sold. Essentially, it's on your
okay, yeah,
loan.
that's
It's
right.
on
Sure,
your
that's right,
loan.
'cause
It's
you
on
had
your
the
loan. So I'm not the
customers, yeah.
benefit. The good thing about what I was doing is I'm not carrying any of the loans. So there was no stress on me. But if I don't turn projects, then I don't make any money either because I'm cost
How
plus.
does that work when you have because we don't build for the
No.
end
But
user,
it's
are you
a
on a
cost plus.
timeline? Are you on a term thing situation where
Well, he'll get draws based on where you're at on the project, right? So if he's going to make 200,000 on the $1 million throughout the whole project, he'll get.
Well, what happens when
percentage.
the
I'll get that
price?
50%
Yeah.
every draw.
But how does that happen if the prices surge and now everything's double, and they have a loan for a certain amount? I mean,
well,
what
they
happens?
have
How
to
do
That's
you-
come out of
exactly
pocket.
what happens.
Yeah.
That's exactly what was happening.
They have to
People-
come out of pocket.
They either have to come out of pocket or they have to do some kind of renegotiation with the bank, and they have to do a reappraisal.
Did
And
you
that
have
was the
anyone
hardest
run into
part.
that situation?
Oh, absolutely. Because what's happened at that time is that the material costs were skyrocketing, and then the appraisals weren't coming in. So you wouldn't get the appraisals because houses that sold in the neighborhood were sold in 2019, but we're paying literally sometimes 50% or 100% more for lumber.
Yeah, that's
And
how it
so,
was.
and now the homeowners are pissed. And I don't blame them. And then when I would get new projects, I'd be like, hey, I don't know. This is the estimate. I can't tell you it's going to be good for the next 7 days.
No,
Because
that's
the
how bad
lumber
it was.
yards-
The lumber was the worst.
Straight up. Like lumber, hey, you want to pick out your brick? That's cool. You want to pick out your brick, but I can't tell you if it's going to be here unless you buy it now. And they're like, well, we haven't even broke ground. I'm like, cool. Well, you're going to need to buy it now.
Yeah, we
They're
had a
like,
lot
well, I
of-
don't want to pay interest on my construction loan. I'm like, well, then
You
you,
wanna
may
guarantee
not
the
get your
prices?
brick.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you may not even get it. And they're like, wow, well, what about my appliances? I'm like, well, you better buy them now because they may be gone. And then that's what happened with pool equipment. You guys talked about it a minute ago being here in Houston.
Everybody was buying pools.
Like everybody's building pools. I mean, it was booming. Like literally right after COVID, it boomed.
Wouldn't it,
And
like-
everybody's trying to build pools because they're like, hell, we're going to get stuck in
Stuck
our
at home.
home. We're going to have a freaking pool instead of a lake house. And then Houston freeze took all the equipment in the South. So
did you become a pool builder at the time?
no,
You should've.
I contracted that out just because I didn't want any more headache. I would hire a pool contractor and I would let them deal with the pool. I didn't do them. I just didn't. I was taught, and I'm glad I didn't because pool contractors, the people that I'm talking about, the actual labor is much worse than home builder contractors. Honestly,
There's not as many of them. Yeah, gunite
not as many
crews
of
and
them.
stuff. It's everybody uses the same.
Yeah. So you see all these pool companies out there. Everybody that sees all these magazines and different pool companies, they're all probably using the same 5 contractors. Straight up.
Yeah, there's good subs and
There's
everybody
only a
that
few
uses
gunite
it.
people. There's only a few people that can do the type of coatings, and there's probably only a few people that do the labor in general.
Probably usually in a smaller town. Probably not as bad.
It's
Oh
almost
no,
the
it's
same.
a lot of people use the same.
Well, Conrad's just a badass then because he gets our pools done in 30
It's
days
similar
or
to
less.
roofing, right? It's the sales side. Like
Yeah.
essentially, you're a broker sales on that business. But yeah, so I made the point. I was like, I told my wife, I'm like, I got to get out of this. And so I was like, hey, all the stuff we've been researching, we would buy courses on real estate investing. I would do whatever it took to educate myself on understanding real estate investing because I didn't know. I grew up in construction, became a builder, and followed that. I didn't know how to buy investments other than the ARVs that I'd done. But I was like, that was not scalable. It's not making me a ton of money. So what do I not know? And so we invested in, educating ourselves and multiple mentorships and things like that. And I was like, hey, get your license and start doing some of the investing. So she was all down. We were learning together, growing together. And she's like, okay. And she did one deal. She did like a double close essentially. We took it down and then we ended up selling it to another investor and we made like 18 grand on that one. And she did it like from her cell phone at work, hanging out with the kids at the house in like 30 days. And I was doing projects that I was splitting with my partner that I was going to make like, I did one remodel specifically that I'm thinking about for a friend that I knew in a smaller area. This isn't one of the multi-million-dollar homes, but a smaller area. So like a $400,000 remodel, which was small for me at the time, just the remodel. And we were going to make, I was going to bring home maybe half of it was going to be the same as what she made in 30 days. And I was like, fuck this. I was like, no way. This is insane. Like, and I'm going to spend 9 months to 10 months.
Was her deal a wholesale deal or?
Yeah. So she bought it direct to seller. She found a for sale by owner and then we locked it up, contracted it. And we actually ended up, because we didn't know anything about assignments, we closed it because we had the bankability, and then we turned around and resold it. So we cost ourselves some money,
A little bit,
but we still
not
made, like 18 grand. So I could have made like 22 or 25, but yeah, knowing what I know now. And so I was like, it was the same epiphany that I had when I had built and sold that spec. I was like, oh, this is how money can be made in a different way. You know what I mean? From going from somebody that was getting paid hourly, working for my dad, selling a spec home, making 40 grand, which was more than I was going to make that entire year as an hourly employee. I was like, this is how money's made. Then years later, as an entrepreneur and growing my building company, she does that. And then I was like, oh, wow, they can be made a different way. And it's non-emotional. It's just learning how to find the deal.
Yeah, buying, reselling, quick, boom.
And then she'd get, as a realtor, she would get, I learned this lesson 2 ways. As a realtor, she would get a commission, right? I knew how that worked because I was a builder. And she would like, some people would be like, hey, we know you from somewhere. Can you buy this house for us and be our realtor? And she would make like $15,000, $20,000 commission just by showing a house. And I was like, that's insane compared to how much work I'm having to put in as a contract, as a builder, as a GC. And then, I realized it when I sold that Street of Dreams home. And I told you guys, I paid in like $68,000. That we wrote that check and the realtor walked off with that because it's her commission. And so we had to pay in because they made,
Why did you lose
5%.
on that particular house? You were just trying to drop it at this point. You just
Yeah, we couldn't move it. Yeah, we were ready to be done with it. And so we had to take the price cut, and the price cut with the commissions on top ended up being $68,000 difference between what we paid the bank and what we owed.
So you bring a check to closing when that happens.
So I brought a check to closing.
I've done that.
And the
with
check
that
went
stupid
right
yacht.
over to the realtor.
Yeah.
I
You
did
know
that,
what I mean?
I did that with a boat once. I bought a boat for my
That's pretty common in boating. In
But
boats
yeah,
and stuff,
I bought one for an ex-fiance because he had bad credit. We were engaged, and then he fucked me over on the boat. So I fucked him over on the house and sold the ring and kind of broke even on that. But yeah, I had to come to closing. And I didn't have the money. I had to refinance a flip house that we were
There you
doing
go.
together. And I still was short, and I didn't have the $13,000. Sean goes, I'm going to write you this check. I don't want to ever hear about that fucking boat again.
Yeah, that's how boats are, right? Everybody says the best time you buy a boat is the
So
first
10
day and the last day.
Yep. So 10 years later, I was like, I'm going to pay you back. And there's a watch that you want. Here's your watch.
Nice.
don't bring up the check again.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did.
Pay it
Nice.
back. So, okay, so what happens next?
Yeah, so I was like, all right, I'm done with these customs. My partner and I were like, he had already been building a while. He had his own company. I was my company, my own company, his company, and then we merged. We had one company together to do our customs in. And so for custom home building, you could just stop doing projects, right? You just don't take on any more clients and you don't have any more business. And so that's what we did. We just did our last projects together, shook hands, went different ways. He still builds. And I went all in on real estate investing and I went hardcore. And so we started taking down like 20, 25 properties a year. And so I had the bankability because I had the business credit.
And were you still using the same
style?
75% of value,
buying
trying to
ARV
walk into
houses.
them with barely any money down?
Yeah, but I started using hard money at this point,
Yeah.
like you were doing, so I can move faster,
Yeah.
right? So
Well,
the
what's the
small
difference?
banks take too long.
Yeah, well, yeah, because
When
it's
you're
45 days
scaling.
to close, but the hard money loan was how long?
You can close in 7
week and a
days.
half. Yeah, a week and a half or so.
And what's the
It
difference
just
in an
depends.
interest rate?
The interest rate, so at that point in time, almost the same because we're talking 2021. The interest rates were low at that point, but hard money now interest rates and at commercial lenders are 10%. I just had an email yesterday, and then hard money is like 12%.
So not too different.
No.
You're not having to refi it.
You will have to refi if you hold the property on a hard money.
Hard money is between 12 and 14, and then sometimes you pay a point or so to close, 2
Yeah,
points to
a
close.
point
And
or
how
two
long do you
months.
have to pay back to the hard money?
You have 12-month terms usually.
Is it? I don't even know what it is nowadays.
Yeah, it's usually 12 months. It's a bridge loan. It's like a construction loan.
You would basically use it to close fast on the property. And then once you got it stabilized, whether it's with a tenant, rehabbed, it's making income, then you go back to the bank and go refinance those hard money guys, get them paid off.
So are you still building your portfolio? 'Cause you said you had 75 now.
Yeah, so we have right around 70 in Oklahoma.
Are you done? Or are you still?
So since we've moved, the game plan that we've had is like we have our in-house property management. We have all that set up. I told y'all also I have a waterproofing company. So I have a commercial and residential waterproofing company that one of the guys I was in Iraq with runs for me and operates, still in Oklahoma. And then we moved to San Diego in March. And so now we're actively starting and regenerating our business out in San Diego. And our game plan is to start doing wholesale, novations, and similar type investing just because we'll get the deal flow and then we can decide if we take it down or not.
But you're going to hold the other 75 that you have.
Yeah,
So
I'm going
keep
to
those
continue
for
to
now?
keep them. Yeah, and so some of those 70 properties, not a lot of people know about. What we do is we contract for deed them or we lease option them, and essentially we become the bank. So we'll own the property and then we'll sell them to somebody else instead of rent them out, which allows us to lower our maintenance issues and things like that. But the downfall would be that you don't get the equity on the back end.
On the property management company, do you do anything for anybody else, or it's just
No, it's
in-house
us.
stuff? Okay.
Yeah, we don't have to have a license or a brokerage that way. If we did other people, we'd have, in the state of Oklahoma, we'd have to have a brokerage and a license.
I don't think it's like that in Texas. I think you can just be a property.
Really?
I don't think so. I'm not sure. I haven't worked with a ton of property management companies. We do it in-house too now.
If you do your own properties, you don't have to have property management in the state of Oklahoma. And if I managed your properties in Oklahoma, I would have to have a license just for fiduciary duty.
Okay.
And so not only a license, but you have to have a broker's license.
So you don't have any employees right now?
I do. I have so we have a bookkeeper still, right? We still have a bookkeeper. I have the waterproofing company still has employees, and then my wife and I. No, we have no other ones. Oh, I have a property manager.
Yeah, he tried a property manager for a little bit and he felt like they were just writing checks.
Well, so not a third party.
You can get
company.
some bad. Yeah, you can. My
it
experience. It
in-house?
was early on though. No. This was just early on in my career, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And one of our projects, we hired a property manager, and they were just writing checks for everything.
I feel like that's what third party property management.
That's what they did.
companies
That's
do.
what I mean. That we
100%.
We hired a
That's
third
exactly
party.
what they do.
And help their
I've
friends
had
out.
them.
And
I've
help
tried
their
I
them.
can't
out,
make
yeah.
any money on
That's
a
all they
property
do.
like this.
No,
It's like,
not single family. No way.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. I've gone down that road because I was like, yeah, we're not going to do any. I'm not going to hire somebody for property management. I'm going to third party it out, and my time's worth
No,
more.
it just doesn't work.
It
Really,
never works. It never works.
Because they're hiring their friends. They're helping out a buddy.
Yeah,
Pocketing some. Probably getting cuts.
yeah.
that
He
and they
hasn't-
just don't care.
He has an
They
assistant.
literally don't care. They solve
Trying to make
problems
it-
by sending people out.
We have an executive assistant now that she runs all of our stuff for our family now, and it's great because she calls and gets 3 quotes. She's price line negotiator over here. She's always getting good deals. And
I
he
love
feels
that.
really comfortable
Yeah,
where he
she's
doesn't have to
great.
run everything by and ask
Is
for
she in house or
permission,
is she
so.
virtual?
She's in house.
She's actually an executive assistant for 3 of us.
That's what I need.
Poor thing
That's what
works
my
like
wife and I
100
both need right
20
now. And
yeah.
we've literally
So I can
started
tell
looking
you-
at virtual stuff.
That's been the biggest game changer probably in the last 25 years of
That
business.
Sean's success formula right here.
I should have done it 10 or 15 years ago, and I
I'm
always
gonna
try to do
pick your brain about
always
this a
try to
lot.
do so much myself, from turning on the water, doing everything, and
It's hard for someone who's a micromanager to let that go and not do all the little things
God,
because you know
mate,
you're going to do the
it's
best
changed
job.
my
You're going to
life
get
so
the best
much.
deal. You're going to hire the best contractor. You're going to check up on the work.
But you
When
can
he
find the
finally
right
let go of
person
that,
though.
yeah, he found
It's
Lynn.
the right person for sure.
Well, I think the biggest thing that we've found that's hard to find, and y'all seem very much so like my wife and I, like sense of urgency. His like your sense of urgency is going to be completely different than 90% of people you interview to
Oh,
do
well,
something.
I'm a micromanager like a motherfucker.
That's
I'm sure she's
exactly
like,
right.
"You and Sean
We're
are
like,
so nice.
you-
I'm like,
I
"But
text you this
really?"
20 minutes ago. Why haven't you called that guy? You know what I'm saying? And so
But it's
you're just
also-
losing your mind.
Learning different personalities, and it's like that with my cosmetic line. My COO now, it took us a good 2 to 3 years to get on the same page of what my expectations were and how to manage what was most important, what needed to come first. Obviously, just like this week, there's a hole in our fucking roof. Get the tree guys out there, get the tree to cut down, line up. I mean, he was doing most of it this time because, she she had no electricity, no power, phones weren't working. But she's really good about, figuring out what's most important, lining it all up, and then now communicating with us at the end of the day with a daily closeout report. So having that, knowing, I learned this from him and his oil and gas company. I took that on with my cosmetic company too, and every layer of management reports to theirs. I got Brian over here loves doing his daily closeout reports, don't you, Brian? But at least we all know without back and forth communication all day, and it can make our time more productive doing what we are best at, making money, lining things up, negotiating, and have them communicate with us once. So we just have 5 emails to read at the end of the day.
That's huge.
I think the biggest thing to look for, though, when you're looking for someone is make sure that they can do everything on their own and just figure stuff out. If you have to go and tell them what to do every single day, all day.
It's not the person.
No,
that would lose
don't
my
do
mind.
it. So it's almost like a
hand-holding,
administrative, just a paper pusher type of person. You need somebody that can go figure stuff out and has a personality.
And just
then they come back to you and say, "Hey, here's
here, or she work at home?"
She works.
okay.
She works from her office and my office.
Awesome.
She does my payroll.
Yeah.
Which is a bitch. We've got like 30 employees.
You found
for
a
the
unicorn.
cosmetic line.
Somebody that can do a lot of jack of all trades.
Yeah. Anyways, I couldn't say anything better about if you think
That's
you need
what I
that,
want.
you should do it. Yeah.
The mistake that I made for a very, very long time, I tried to do too much myself, and it just led to extreme burnout. Where I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And now I have a lot of help, not just her, but other people that work directly for my company that help me out, and trusting in them that they're going to make the same decision. You can tell them that you fucked up on, but you can tell them the stove is hot, the stove is hot, the stove is hot, and they're still going to go,
exactly.
but why? And they're going to burn their fingers, and they're not going to do it again. But it took me, because I'm just a professional fine-tooth comb where I want everything perfect all the time. And I feel like what got my company to where it is now is because we were the Chick-fil-A of cosmetics. Everything was very consistent. And sometimes when you bring new people in, they don't really understand why you have all these strange rules. Right. But Amber can tell you now, she's sitting over there in the background, that, a lot of people, when they come to work for me, they're like, God, what a fucking psychopath. And then they go to work to one of our retailers or they go into another salon and they're like, it's chaos. Nobody knows anything. But, getting your employees on the same page as you, what your expectations are, letting them touch the stove, figuring it out, but then releasing that control and letting them take over.
It's
and,
hard,
and
right?
Being okay with them making mistakes and making you look bad and your name look bad, but it's the only way that you can scale.
Yeah.
Because I was stuck at like $4 to $5 million a year, and I couldn't get past that until I have a team where I can focus more on the marketing and not packing orders when we get really busy,
because
or
it takes
answering
away
to
from
the
the
customer
company.
service stuff. And this is like, I go down this rat hole where you just get stuck on the hamster wheel, doing the same shit every day. And then having someone like Lynn supporting the executives, and helping them keep their life together and not taking no for an answer. Like, they fucked us over on our hotel last night, and we still had a hotel to sleep in because she started. Good thing this is going to come out later. But she was crying, fake crying to the hotel. And said, I'm going to get fired if my boss doesn't have a bed to sleep in tonight.
She came in clutch.
But she doesn't take no. And we've had other people that work for us that just they don't get it. They want to text you.
It doesn't work. What should I do? That's the worst.
can't.
She'll go figure it out.
Yes.
Yeah. So I tell people, I'm like, do not text me during the day. Don't unless the place is burning down or someone
Solve
is
the
on
problem
fire.
on your own.
Figure it the fuck out.
Yes.
And when you can, train your people to do that, it just makes you so much more efficient, where you're not like a moving target.
Exactly. I love that. I need this person, definitely.
So what do you feel like the biggest lesson learned in more recent years that you can help somebody kind of like, get past a hurdle that, they wouldn't have known otherwise? If they're interested in doing this.
For sure. So there's a lot of information out there, right, in real estate investing. I mean, you guys will probably interview a ton of them and eventually, and you did already. But I think figuring out how you want to shape your life is really important with it too, because there's development, there's real estate agents, there's so many avenues of approach to make money in real estate. That's why I tell people up front, I'm like, there's so many ways to make money in real estate. But like, I went out and I got a 3,300 square foot office. I rehabbed it. I did all this stuff. I brought all these people in, and then I realized, I was like, well, I'm like, maybe y'all have gotten to a point where you don't have to, but I was like, I have to check in here every day. I've created my own prison and I don't want to be here. I was like, I want to be on my phone. I want to go over here. I want to do this. I want to do what I want when I want. That's why I became an entrepreneur. And so I had to unwind that mess. And so when scaling, you need to be careful and define what scaling is actually for and why you want to do it. I mean, I think that's huge, right? If you're some people want to have a massive brick and mortar building and do all these things and have these people in house and stuff, and then other people want to have a lifestyle business. And I think that you have to kind of define that in advance almost. And you may not know until you start trying it. I don't know.
And that's why he likes to be in commercial real estate, because it's a lot of like hands off. at
It
this
is.
point.
Oh,
It's not,
and then just
it's not as labor
the dollar
intensive.
volume is just a little bit higher for the same amount of work, pretty much.
Probably less.
But I think also it depends on people's situation. So if somebody has a full-time job and they like their career, they can still go out, and if they have the right education, they can be buying houses every couple of months.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I tell people too. I'm like, you got a
It's such a
W-2.
good investment, such a good easy thing to do on the side. People are always like, "Oh, I don't have
much
time,"
time?
because you can always go check on the house after work, and like you could work a 9 to 5 job and buy houses almost every month. You could buy
Exactly.
1 or 2 houses
You
every
can.
month and
A-
still do your
100%.
9 to 5 job, and won't take away from your
It'll
work.
make you millions in the
Yes.
future. It'll
Yep.
make you worth so much more. Yep.
And then they can still have their standard paycheck that they'll get that they can pay their bills with, but then they're building like real wealth
Right.
instead of just
Dumping it
what
into some 401k or
15,000 a year maybe
Yeah.
max or something like that. in
How is it
401k.
managing all these now that you're gone? You're not
It
there.
was tough. So
You
I
feel
mean,
like you
I
feel
was
like a
hands
pulling
off
sensation
before.
in the beginning. Like you're like, I can't be there. I need to be
Massively.
there.
That was really
I know that
hard.
feeling.
Now it makes it a real business because it's actually operating
Because I
without
had
you.
to. And I was like, this is going to test it, you know?
What changes did you have to make leaving and going to San Diego?
We've changed a few people, like people in our offices, right? Like people that I thought were going to take care of things, sense of urgency, systems and processes, morning meetings, how we're doing Zoom meetings, who shows up. Like, I think people, when you're there every day, they know that you're going to check on them, and when you're not there every day, they're
Productivity
going to like,
goes,
it's gonna go
"Ooh."
exactly. And so that's been tough. But then you have to weed out those people and find like what you guys have with your EA now, with your executive assistant. That's where we've gone through. We're still learning right now. It's only been 4 months.
And I know you've already gotten into education now too. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
What are
'Cause
you
like
doing
what he
with
just
it?
said.
So I was asking when I was watching your social media. I was like, what is he educating on? Is he doing like lifestyle?
He's
stuff? Is
like,
it
why
fitness?
is
Is-
the real estate guy have his
what
shirt
What
off?
is the link every 1 or 2 days that he's posting?
Yeah,
So what
yeah.
is this?
Yeah. So what I started out doing was real estate investing. It's like, I already know how to do this. I can help people get into real estate investing. I'm going to show them exactly how I bought my first rental, bought my first flip, because I did it backwards. A lot of people will tell you to go wholesale first, and I didn't wholesale first. What people don't tell you about wholesale is that it's a marketing and sales company. And so you're going to have to spend a lot of money in order to get these deals. And if you do have a job, just like Sean said, you don't have the time to pick up these
You can't
phones
go
and
wholesale.
cold call and go wholesale and run to Debbie's
It's
house.
very labor intensive because then you have to
Very.
go, even when you get a deal, you have to go look at it. You have to
Bingo.
put together numbers, take the picture.
Nobody talks about this.
Man, it's tough.
And it's not only labor intensive, but let's talk about marketing. Like, sure, you can get a couple of deals a year and make a couple $1,000, maybe $20,000-$30,000 on some wholesales. But if you want to make it into a real business, how much are you gonna have to put into marketing channels, letters? How much are you gonna have cold callers? What are you texting?
It's sales and it's definitely
sales and
it's
marketing.
sales
So you
driven
get
big time.
so it's not really real estate. And so you start holding property, and so you start flipping property, or understanding banking and lending and lines of credit and things like that. And so I started in reverse because I had a building reputation, I had bankability, I had business ability. So I started with going to the bank and them approving me, and then getting a loan, and then doing a flip. And so what I show people is that they can do that too, regardless of their situation. For the most part, it's like you can still get into this if you find the right deal. And so I started with real estate investing. And as he said, one thing I tell them as well, not only is there W2, you can keep your job if you prefer for the safety net and still do this at the same time.
Absolutely recommend.
But I say, dude, you're going to bring home more money even if you break almost even on the property, because you're going to be able to depreciate the real estate, and you're going to bring home all your taxes that you would have sent off to nowhere land, the government. And so it's a great thing for people to get involved in, just so they can start understanding assets and liabilities and finances and taxes.
And single family is really safe. Like I've never had a house sit. If you buy a smaller house that's going to rent for $1,200 to $1,500 a month,
Yep.
it'll never sit for more
so
than
is there
2
a
weeks
certain
ever.
area when you're trying to find a really good deal? Like Sean always looks for like chemical plants, or you know what I mean, where people he knows are going to be
Military
able to
bases,
lease.
things
Yeah,
like that.
like a 3-2 house though in a decent area, it's always going to rent. It
Yeah, and so most of my portfolio is made up of houses below $200,000.
Yeah, that's
Do
all.
you have a
That's all
certain
the ones
budget that
I
you try
had
to stay under when you buy it? Like if I mean, it's a good deal, you're getting it, 50, 60% less than cost. Is there something you always try to stay under like number wise? Is it like at 65, 70% all in, or deal or no
70%
deal?
used to be
Or?
really easy to hit. It's harder with prices and
is,
stuff.
with
So you're
interest
like
rates and stuff
75,
now too,
80%. But, I try to stay under 70 if you can. It weeds out things. If you're aggressively buying, then you're going to hit 75, 80%.
Is your long goal to buy and hold?
The long
Or
goal,
try to get them all
so
sale,
I
or?
think it depends on the strategy and where you're at, So I've accumulated what we have now, and I think for us in the future, we're going to make a decision on, continuing to scale that into hundreds and hundreds of single families, or is there another vehicle that could grow us faster with the same amount of effort? And
Have you
that's what
gotten
we're
into
talking
commercial
about.
yet?
I only own my own office. That's my only commercial, and honestly, it's super easy. I mean, I own the property. I make like $1,000 net on it. It's not a triple net contract, but I mean, I net like $1,000 on it a month. So after PTI, taxes, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, I still net like about $1,000. And so it's been great, and less liability.
So with your courses, how hands-on are you? Is it like someone pays like a monthly? I know you said it was very affordable as monthly fee for someone to get started. If they're interested in doing this, and is it just videos or is it time with you? Is it? I saw you like walking around. People are videoing properties and showing you before they buy.
Yeah. So I started in real estate, and what happened was a lot of people would reach out to me and like, dude, I want to learn more, but I don't have the money to invest in your program. And so I started at a high.
You're like, well, I don't have the time.
Yeah. Well, some people will only be making $50,000 a year or below that, and so I started asking them questions, because as we talked off camera, before I got into real estate investing. And before anybody gets into real estate investing, they probably need to have the basics of life down before. And I've had everybody call me from, hey man, I just got out of prison 2 days ago. Hey man, on this, and I'm not saying that they can't do it.
Well,
I'm
Eric
just saying,
did it. Yeah,
Eric did it. You're right. He's a rarity, right? But the reality is like, there's some other disciplines he had to have had in order to get where he is. It didn't start with like, well, I just wanted to make money, right? Like he had to like have a lot of discipline to do what he does. And the same with me.
So do you like interview them first before you even see if it's a good fit?
Well, so I have multiple programs. So I have a base program where I help people basically get their stuff down, right?
Okay.
Like read the right books, re-educate yourself, unprogram all the things that you think about money and you think about life. Have a disciplined schedule so that you can actually balance your own time and stop making excuses with your own finances. So I have a basic program, what I'm building out now, where almost anybody can get onto that. And then it does apply with fitness a lot too. I mean, as you're a guy that loves to work out, everybody in this room,
Sean doesn't work out.
He's like, yeah,
just a little bit.
So I think that's something else that I help them with. I work with them on that and getting their routine down and building that foundation for somebody that's actually coachable to the next level, because that came before I took those disciplines for granted coming out of the Marine Corps. And I think that I realized when people started calling me for real estate, I was like, oh, well, yeah, I can teach you how to get a deal, but there's a lot of other stuff in your life. You're talking about your wife divorcing you. You're talking about your finances.
Right now is not a good time.
You go and buy a deal, the best deal in the world. You're still going to fuck it up. You're still going to screw it up and just destroy your credit in your life. So
I think also teach people like how to get the emotion out of it, take the emotion out of it, because people, when they want to get into this, they're so like, this is going to be so good. It's going to be like, what are the Joanne and whatever.
Joanna Gaines. I use that all
they think
the
it's
time.
going to be all sunshine and rainbows like
HGTV.
that. And then they're like, oh, fuck, this is a lot harder than I thought.
Right.
But do you recommend for them to do their own work in the beginning too?
No,
or
never.
Hire out trades?
So on the real estate side, so I have the base program, then I have the real estate investing program too, and it's more of a higher tier. And then I have a one-on-one program where I work directly with them. And so we're doing Zoom calls a week. And so that's the top. But my most successful people are the ones that already have their life squared away and they go right into real estate, right? Like immediately. And they'll like make 25 grand in 90 days.
Yeah, go figure, right?
Exactly. But that's why I opened the other program up.
That's really cool. I think it's a huge deal, and I really like what you're doing with the education side. I think that nowadays you don't really need to go to school, or if you have the right information, you don't even need to go to college. It's just so, I think, outdated.
It is.
And with the right information, you can make millions of dollars, really. Right. I mean, it's super easy.
I mean, when you and I started, we didn't have it. There was no YouTube. Really.
That's what I told her. I was like, I had to wing it.
I had to go to what are they called? RIA. I'd start showing up to RIAs, real estate investing meetings in like your local town. And then I started reading books.
You know how valuable it is to pay somebody $3,000 not to lose a bunch of money on your first deal, just to like
make to people enough.
Hey, this will save you so much money. Yeah. This little small amount of money.
And I tell people that's what I did. Like even as a builder, like and people are like, well, you could afford the course or you could afford these programs because you were a builder. I was like, first of all, you don't know builders because I was waiting on my next one and I'm dumping money into the next thing and I have all this expenses and things going on in my own life.
So the $3,000 they pay you is going to save them $30 down the road. So it's investing in yourself.
100%.
If you're going to buy a $200,000 house or $150,000 house, $3,000 isn't going to
nothing.
It's exactly what we did. Courses.
Yeah, to not make a mistake.
Well, because I made the mistake on the specs and doing these things, which you and I talked about. And I was like, dude, if I could have saved myself those lessons, that would have been huge.
It was a lot of aha moments that you're watching and you're like, yep, been there, done that. Yep. All these things they're teaching you, you're like, I already have this experience.
Yeah. Well, what they said, like one of the courses I went to, and this is like when I would go to live events, like you'd go to a course and they would have like a seminar. Like that's where I came from, not like Instagram where you had Zoom wasn't even a thing, right? Yeah. And so you'd educate yourself that way. You'd be in a room with other investors and one guy would be talking and you'd be learning and writing things down. That's how I started educating myself. And they'd be like, yeah, so, explain to speculative investment. Mind you, I'd already done specs at this time. But then he's like, look up the term speculative investment. And I look at it, it's like, this is basically gambling. You don't want to do this.
Really
I was like, Well, that's why I almost fucking lost my ass in 2018.
His partner did. He
You know what I
he
mean?
lost everything at one point. He
Well,
had to
then I
just make
started
a
thinking
decision,
about it.
yeah.
They make my mind change, and I was like, "Well, that's right, dude. All these builders that I've been building around, like this one went up and this one went down. You know the builder cycle. They're like, they move into the spec, they look like a baller, they got all the nice cars, and then the next year they're going bankrupt, and the next year they're rich again because the economy went up. They're literally riding just the building market
Cycles, yeah.
That's all they're riding. They don't know anything about money. They're just hoping.
It's also super hard because when you're building, you have to project. If you're building spec, you're not starting a deal a month later. You're projecting, you're buying land, you're
6
projecting
to 12 months out.
Yes. And so how do you know what's going to happen? You don't. And so it's really hard. It's that to build houses all spec is really tough.
Exactly. Now there's niche markets like what Eric's
Yeah.
got his on. I mean, he's definitely on a niche market, but that same model in my market would not work, right? And in Oklahoma specifically, because what I would try to do is infill stuff like that. I was like, okay, so I'm going to take my investing knowledge and my building knowledge, and I'm going to put it in downtown Oklahoma City or something. Bull, I'm too small to make an impact. I'm going to go put up this nice new spec, but it's going to be next to a house that's going to sell for $150,000, and the building cost alone is going to be over $300,000 just for the material and the labor and the lot takedown.
So if somebody really wants to do this and they don't really have knowledge coming from you, like your dad or some kind of mentor to help them, how do they really know? Like, do you have a construction Bible that you provide them? Like,
A lot
how
of
do
people
they get
guide
started?
through it, and I do have a construction part in the course, so they not only get. Usually, we'll do some of the middle program. What I'll do is we have group calls. We have a whole community of other people that are doing it, and we all get on there. Everybody's talking about what they're going through, their successes, the things they need help with. I'm helping now.
They're
Other
all
people in the
listening.
community are helping. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's great for everybody to listen in on other people's mistakes and coming to you with deals. And
Exactly. And what's cool is I have people in there that are in Colorado that are buying affordable housing in Ohio. And then I have people in California. Then I have people in Oklahoma, of course. I've had people in Arizona. And so everybody's sharing. And the cool part about that is, I know that there's systems and processes that need to be tweaked a little bit for each little market now, because it's all relatively the same concept, but like for instance, living in San Diego versus Oklahoma City is quite a bit of a difference, right? The concept's the same. How you want to buy the deal's the same. Getting the deal's the same, but the price of the deal is completely different. And
like 3 and 4 times the price.
The play is completely different too. So like in California, you're playing an appreciation play. Like if you want to get wealthy and you have the ability and you can get out there and you can buy property, we all know that in 20 years from now, houses in La Jolla, houses in Southern California are going to be worth substantially more.
Isn't San Diego one of the most inflated places right now? Or some of the highest?
San Diego has not seen that big of a market drop right now. What happened was Austin, Texas got hit pretty hard, and so is Florida. Florida was definitely a spike because actually most people are leaving California, and once they go back, it'll be crazy in my opinion.
I've been reading that Austin was one of the top 5 places that the real estate was going to just crash, and it has not.
Well, the problem too is they're taking the whole entire market also. So a lot of this stuff's still doing good, but you have a lot of these like mid-range houses that I think got hit pretty hard.
For sure. And so find a good example though is like anything below $1 million in San Diego County still doing great. But that's the same as like anything below $150,000 in downtown Oklahoma City is still doing okay, great,
So how do people find you on social media? Where are you at?
Yeah, I'm always on Instagram. So
Instagram,
Austin.Hancock1.
TikTok, or YouTube, or all of the
TikTok,
above?
all the above. YouTube. Yep.
Austin.Hancock1.
Yep. That's it.
Okay, so they can check you out there. They can find a link to your website in your bio, I'm assuming.
Yep,
Or they
absolutely.
can find all of your courses, because I know a lot of people, we interview so many people that are in real estate, but I say just take the little nuggets from each person. You're going to learn something different, and
Yeah,
it's
we have
worth
questions
investing
people
in
ask
yourself.
all the time, where to get started. And so it's good information. I definitely think the online education stuff is amazing.
I wish I
If
had
gets-
it. And I tell people this
that's
on the
what I-
phone. I'm
that's
like,
what I
I'm
think
not
about when I
selling
was
you.
18.
I
I'm
wish
like,
I
if
had
I
it.
had something
Yeah.
whenever I was 18 just to like save me all these mistakes. And
Yeah, well,
years
I'll
of
give you
experience.
one example before we close out. Is like I took a rental, some of those rentals. I only had one left of the 5 that I sold when I was like stopping, and I was like, I can't get rid of this one. I don't know what to do with it, and I ended up selling it on a contract for deed because I had went to one of those courses and they taught me how to do this. And so I took what was a potential loss that was already costing me money every single month by not paying.
And you would have never known.
And I would have never known. I would have sold it and I would have had to pay to sell it and I would have known nothing. But what I did is I sold it for almost market value to somebody and they brought $20,000 to the table. And then I financed it them for 4% over my interest rate. And so now I'm in business. And I was like, what? I just turned a loss into a positive.
No
And so that little
expenses, yeah.
course I went to that weekend or
Yeah.
that thing that I invested in.
Like every single one of them, you take something away. Yeah. And that one thing saved you whatever you paid for that tenfold.
And still today, I'm invest over 6 figures a year and going to masterminds. I mean, I'm in communities of entrepreneurs and I'm in communities of of real estate investors that are doing massive numbers. And so, I mean, something similar to what I'm sure you would be in, right? Like you were like, oh, you're doing commercials. So we would get to pick each other's brain and talk about pitfalls and things like that. So surrounding yourself with those people and getting involved is huge.
Are you in any of the groups too?
Yeah, I
Like
am.
social media
Yep,
groups.
yep.
I think that's beneficial. What I've heard over and over again is people getting on the groups, being able to open ask questions and hear other people's experience, paying for these courses, finding who's the best fit for you, and having that mentorship, spending a little bit more, and having someone that you can call and say deal or no deal.
There's times where I'm walking people. I'll help them underwrite their deal when they're working with me on the one-on-one, and that's huge. So what they'll do is they'll think they have a deal, and I'll start asking questions, and by the end of the call they'll be like, "Yeah, this isn't a good one, is it?" And I was like, "I just wanted you to learn that this is why it's not a good one, right? We teach people how to fish, not just give them here's a course, good luck." You know, I mean,
Walk
that
them
would
through
be
the
hard.
first
Walk
few.
them through the first few, and once people see, just like you and I, once you see proof of concept, once they've done that deal, I've had people quit their jobs. I've had people that worked oil and gas in Oklahoma that were out on the rigs for 4 weeks.
It does. If
And
you
they're
only
like-
do 2 or 3,
he's like, "I'm done."
You're like, this. Okay, I understand.
That's what I did, right? Yeah.
2 or 3, you're pretty like eager to go do a bunch of them. After that, you're like, okay, this works.
Yeah, exactly. You can bet on yourself.
Some people keep that backup plan for a little bit longer too, but the second you free yourself up, that's when you can scale it and take it, to where you
Yeah,
have
but
70
still,
plus houses.
people can work their 9 to 5 and just they could buy houses.
It depends on the person. Like you and I went obviously the other direction.
I
We
could.
went
I mean,
all
I
in.
couldn't do it, but I'm just saying if somebody
But
really
other people
still
can
wanted
do
to be
this
wealthy
forever.
but never wanted to take that much risk, I mean, they could just keep buying stuff.
Absolutely. At a certain point, though, for some of these people, if they did want to go all in, they're costing themselves the growth and the scalability by going to a
Depends on
job
what
that
they
pays
want.
them. Depends on what they want to do, though. So what happens
Your distraction when you're trying to like answer
is,
stuff. all
yeah,
day.
if they have a full-time job and then they've proved that they can make $25,000 in 90 days and they did it again, or they have 3 or 4 rental properties, they end up costing themselves that time by going to their 9 to 5 that they make, $60,000, $50,000. So.
Well, I think we have a lot of takeaways from this today. They know
Yeah,
how to
that's great.
contact you. I hope you get some people inboxing you, get some of our stalkers to start inboxing you.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I'm happy
you're
to
welcome
answer
in
any
advance.
questions for sure.
Oh yeah, they're messaging Sean all the time. Help! How do I get you to mentor me? Sean's like, I ain't got time for that right now. Just wait.
That's a whole
We're gonna
nother
inter-
deal.
And that's why we're introducing them to people that can help them. So there's,
Yeah.
I mean, even just from like our social media stories yesterday, people started saying, "Oh, I want to know how to do the short-term stuff. I can't wait for this podcast. Or how can I reach out to him? Can I reach out to him? Should I message him?" I'm like, yes, message him.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it's the whole purpose of the podcast, though, is education. So, I mean,
an introduction to.
that's
people can. What I like about y'all's podcast and what you're doing is you're interviewing each concept of real estate. You're interviewing each people doing different types of business, because there's people out there that probably would be like, "Why would you ever quit custom home building?" Such as the gal that you had interviewed, because she really loves the things that she does, and she's great at it, like phenomenal at it. For me, much like you, I'm like, well, I mean, for myself, I'll be like, okay, how does this? I just want to do business. I don't really care about the light fixture. Let's just get it up.
Like, move on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah, she's really good with people, and she's very calm. Her demeanor, she can just handle it. I can't. I could never. I
she
can't
would
do
never.
that.
You and I,
She would never
exactly.
be able to build a custom
Yeah.
home for somebody.
You're like, yeah,
It
do you
just
not like this or
wouldn't
not?
happen.
Make a decision. Let's go. That's
Yeah.
how I felt.
You are too, though. You're like, go. Let's move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, I
Time away from
appreciate
your
you guys
family
having
and
me
your
here.
and your cute little girls and your
Thank
wife to
you.
come
I
here
appreciate
today.
that.
So,
Yeah.
especially during a hurricane, so you're welcome to what you see outside. It doesn't always look like this, but thanks. We really liked having you here today.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you, guys.